All right, Nate, keeping it in the Eastern Conference for today, as that's all we have for Wednesday night. We're looking at Philly now headed to Toronto. They will be without Matisse Thybulle, short note, but they, as we mentioned in earlier game videos, kind of kept him on the bench for games 1 and 2, probably prepping for playing without him in game 3. Not that they really need him right now. You've got plenty of Danny Green, who is actually playing pretty well as well. So yeah, in this game, I mean, in this specific game, right, we're looking at a little bit lower line of -2 here, right, for in favor of Philly still, 216.5 total. I don't know. Are you looking at much in this game? Are you looking at the series here? How are you looking at Toronto and Philly now?
Yeah, I mean, the series is just interesting discrepancy here. At FanDuel, they have Toronto plus 165 to cover by 2.5, so to at least force 6. But for the series to go 6 and not 7 is plus 400. So definitely some value there if that's the way you want to bet it. I'd be very hesitant, though, because of the state of Toronto's roster. I mean, we know Scotty Barnes is probably out for this game as well. Thaddeus Young hobbled, barely made a dent in his return. Gary Trent Jr. had to leave the game with a non-COVID illness in game 2. And Fred VanVleet is just not himself. I mean, he's just dealing with a multitude of injuries. They had to almost shut him down at the end of the regular season. And so if FVV isn't where he's at, I mean, don't the Sixers have the first, second, and fourth best player in this series? And isn't Tyrese Maxey the second best player at this point? Zing for James Harden. But I mean, as of how they're playing right now, sure. But even with a bad James Harden game, after, we saw good Harden in game 1, then he goes for 6 assists and 5 turnovers on 3 for 9 shooting. The team pretty much the same splits, 52% from the field, 46% from deep, still got 30 free throws with Maxey going for 23, 9, and 8, and efficient shooting, and Embiid doing what we predicted without Barnes getting 31 points. Now in his last 2 against the Raptors without Scotty Barnes playing, Embiid is 20 for 32 shooting, and he has 67 points. That has led to this being the slowest paced series so far, in terms of Philly knowing what they want to do is just throw it into Embiid, make you adjust, keep him fresh by playing slow. So Toronto's got to counter at home by pushing the pace, and we talk about how their fast break points are so important for them. They've got to try to push it, and at home they had a lot more success offensively since they got OG back around February 1st. Their offensive rating spiked to 120 at home. They averaged 116 points versus 108 on the road. I actually like OG to continue eating in this one here. I mean, he has 46 points on 19 for 29 shooting in the first 2 games because, like we said, Danny Green's playing more minutes. They're not playing Thybulle as if, they didn't want to have that weird rug pulled out from under you when all of a sudden he's not in the rotation in Toronto. And Danny Green, while he's been solid and he's a great playoff veteran, this year, 120.5 individual defensive rating thus far. He's 34 years old. He is not really containing OG, who has a multitude of moves and really has become the second option if VanVleet is not that healthy. Going to see even more usage rate with those other 2 guys out, Trent and Barnes. So he's at 17.5 points or 27.5 PRA, like that there. But I'm betting the Sixers at this point. I mean, because of the state of this situation. And yeah, I mean, the Sixers better on the road this season too, 19-6 straight up when listed as road favorites. And that is their highest rate to the over as well, 17-7-1 this year. So I think Toronto's trying to push the pace more. If Philly is still able to score whenever they want just by throwing the ball down to Embiid, and they don't have their best defender, even though he hasn't been playing that much, I do like the over here. I mean, Toronto's offense was just tanked in game 2 because of the unexpected departure of Trent and because they're on the road. And I mentioned that home road split. So as long as they come along, I think we get over 216. And I do like the Sixers at -2. But if you want to use that total and tease it down with another result, we talk about the Nets at +7.5. That feels great. And teasing that with this total at 212 I feel great about that as a combined bet here tonight.
I'm actually just going to hammer the 76ers total as soon, once again, just full transparency, as soon as we are on break here from this episode, because it's at 108.5. And since just everything that I'm looking at that I would care about to indicate how they're going to play on offense tonight screams over. I would have bet it at like 112.5, and I'll look at some alternate lines. But Philly right now, I mean, since James Harden came to the team, on the road, their splits there, they're back about 114.5 points per game on the road since that time. Against Toronto this season, the only time they didn't score more than 109 points was at home. In the two games on the road, they scored 114 in both of those against Toronto. And dating back to last season, 4 of their last 5 against Toronto, they've scored more than 109 points. So there's nothing, no Scotty Barnes. And like you said, FEV is hobbled, which, to be honest, only to me hurts the total for Philly if you like the over, because we need him to score to keep this game somewhat close and keep Philly motivated to keep scoring. But I think they're going to be doing it no matter what tonight, to be honest. And what they've done so far in the series is drop 131 followed by 112. And as you mentioned, James Harden hasn't really had a good game yet. I mean, that's not fair to say. If you look at his overall output, maybe his point total isn't what you like, and maybe we're not going to see 28 and 9 and 7 James Harden anymore. But we can see 17 and 12 and 4 rebounds James Harden plenty. And I think we'll continue to do that. I think the assists are what he's obviously going for. In the last game, he did look for his shot a little bit more. I mean, 3 for 9 from the field. So it's not like he was still putting up a ton of usage. Really it was just about get Embiid the ball. And then after that, James Harden seems perfectly happy. Like I said in the other video about Toronto and Philly, perfectly happy to let Tyrese Maxey cook. And that's maybe he's just tired, because he's never really seemed like he was okay giving up the limelight. And it seems like he's totally fine dishing and diming to Tyrese Maxey, who's streaking all over the floor right now. Really amazing young players that we have showing out in the playoffs. It's super fun to watch, especially he and like Jay Poole over in Golden State. But yeah, 2 points is too low. Maybe this is, Vegas is like, look, they're playing for their lives. And this is Nick Nurse and Pascal Siakam and OG and a bunch of dogs at home with a bit of an advantage in terms of the way that they played at home and the choppy, gross pace that they probably want to continue to play. Just because at this point if they don't have Fred VanVleet's shooting, that's really why they came out hot in game 2 and made people think maybe this was going to be the series that we thought it was, where Toronto was going to keep things close. But look, man, there's no Scotty Barnes. Precious Achiuwa is out of his league, and there's really nobody there at all to even battle with Embiid or give him problems now. So the 31 points only came because he didn't really need to play very much after they built a commanding lead, in the third quarter. There's plenty of other guys at this point that can get the ball in the bucket. So I mean, I'm wary of taking his props still. But yeah, I think there's some money to be made here on 108.5 point total for the 76ers.
Yeah, because Tobias Harris has been playing well as well. We didn't really mention that. And Danny Green can knock down open threes in the playoffs, as we know. But Nick Nurse, you mentioned, I mean, when he's lobbying the refs to call fewer fouls for Embiid, things are pretty desperate. I mean, that's almost like that time in the Celtics series last year where he's jumping on the floor to try to force a turnover. It's a bad look, Nick Nurse. And then at the end of the game, Embiid's going over there, patting him on the head, saying like, yeah, nice try. But he has Embiid that is 12 for 14 at the line, to get most of those 67 points in consecutive meetings without Scotty Barnes. The Sixers are scoring 2 points per game more on the road since Harden got involved, and the pace is slightly faster. 1 possession more per game on the road. Like I mentioned, I think Toronto will try to push it a little bit more. So, yeah, I do like the over. I definitely lean towards Sixers here, but it is a desperate Toronto team. It will be a rocking building. And I see why the team total is kind of low, because Toronto at home, right, they won 93-89, I think, one of the last times they faced at home. But then, again, 119-114 the following meeting. Yeah. So I think that was just an off night for Philly scoring the ball. And Embiid, is just too unstoppable right now. And the reason Maxey and Harris look so good is because they're catching the Raptors in rotation because they have no options to deal with Embiid, and they have to double right away. And there's nothing they can do. That just opens up everything for the Sixers, who still could get a big offensive game from Harden. Yeah, if he decides he wants to be aggressive at some point.
Yeah, if he does, and maybe he will, but I think, he's a little bit of a wild card in terms of the types of stats that you expect him to get. And so I think, I do like the idea of some player performance doubles here, not because I'm worried about that 2-point spread. I feel great about hitting that. I'm still okay with the 108.5 team total for Philly, despite how well Toronto does play at home on defense and at home in general. It's just not the same team right now with people out, and especially Scotty Barnes, which he's obviously top 3 in Rookie of the Year voting, but you could make the argument for him based on the fact that he does the most for his team. Yeah, you like him number 1. I mean, he does the most different the most types of things for his team that they need, from point guard to center, essentially, right, on both sides of the floor. And so I think that's where you really miss him, is he shows his value in so many different ways, especially, as we say, guarding Embiid. Looking at those player performance doubles real quick, plus 104 for Embiid to get a double-double, and for Philly to win. I do like attacking that because I don't really want to have to go too far down the rabbit hole of how many points he's going to score. I think you consider Tyrese Maxey again. 20 points in a victory is actually plus 225. Getting more juice there because that spread is lower than it was in those first 2 games, where you might have been looking at about plus 175 for Maxey to get 20 and a win for Philly. I do like him because I think, I do think James Harden continues to sort of take a backseat in the scoring role, which leads him to being the second scorer, and Tobias 2A, 2B, however you want to put it. But Maxey's going to get minutes no matter what. He's 20 years old. Even if this game is at 15 points in the middle of the fourth quarter, he's going to be out there because Doc feels comfortable leaving him out there with a bunch of other guys like Niang and company, and not needing Harden and Tobias and Joel on the floor. When he's got Maxey, a like reliable guy like Danny Green and a veteran there, with a couple of those other guys in the front court, yeah, they're fine against the Raptors and this iteration of the Raptors. So there's plenty of minutes for Maxey there. I think there's a great juice at 20 points and a win for them at plus 225.